Welcome back to Cyber Distortion. In this eye-opening episode, hosts Kevin and Jason sit down with Rob Allen from Threatlocker to break down one of the most talked about and misunderstood concepts in cybersecurity today, zero trust. With a deep well of technical expertise and real-world business acumen, Rob brings clarity to the chaos, cutting through the jargon to explain what zero trust really means, why it matters, and how organizations of all sizes can adopt it effectively. Whether you're a seasoned security pro or just starting to wrap your head around zero trust architecture, this episode gives you the insights and practical takeaways you need without the confusion. Expect real talk, real strategies, and a fresh perspective on building a more secure future. Don't miss this chance to learn from one of the industry's most experienced leaders in cybersecurity, zero trust infrastructure, and customer-driven solutions. Zero trust doesn't have to be complicated. Let's make it make sense.
Hey, welcome to the Cyber Distortion podcast. I'm Kevin. I'm Kevin. I'm going to be
You
Kevin
are?
today, Kevin.
Okay, cool.
I'm Jason.
I'm confused.
I've got with me Kevin, and we're breaking down an amazing topic. We haven't talked about this topic now for a couple of years. It's a shame we haven't. But we're coming back to one of the roots of what the things we've talked about in the past, and that's zero trust. And in order to talk about zero trust, we had to bring on someone special, someone important, someone who knows this inside and out. So today we have with us Rob Allen from Threatlocker, no other than Threatlocker. Now, if you don't know Threatlocker by now, there's something wrong with you, because I think by now everybody knows about Threatlocker in this industry. We're fortunate enough to have Threatlocker as a sponsor for the Cyber Distortion podcast, and we're very grateful for you guys supporting us in everything that we do. And for that reason, we feel like this topic is so important to cover because it hits at the core of a philosophy, a thinking, a way of changing how will you approach managing attacks in your infrastructure. And so let's start with that for a moment. Like, that philosophy is built within a mindset that is centered around zero trust, and zero trust being deny by default, permit by exception. All right. So remember that as we go into this topic today, that by default, everyone's blocked. So you better feel like you know the right person if you're going to get access to anything in an environment. And then once you do, then we'll let you in. So I do that to Kevin all the time. That's my philosophy. Zero trust Kevin, and then make him beg, and then give him some access to a few things. So yeah, with that, Kevin, do you want to say a few things before?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm Jason, not Kevin, right?
I was going to say that I'm tremendously
Yeah, now you're just going to confuse Rob. Let's just stick with what we started with. All right, I'm Jason.
Yeah,
but no,
okay.
we actually, as Jason mentioned, this is not the first time we've talked zero trust. We brought on one of the C levels from Zscaler a while back. We had a good time talking to him on this topic. It's an interesting topic to talk about. And as Jason mentioned, Rob Allen is one of the experts in this, and of course from one of the best products in the industry that deals with zero trust. So thank you again, Threatlocker, for sponsoring the podcast. I became first familiar with Threatlocker a couple of years ago. I heard about you guys through MES. Rob, you guys were doing demos out there. I think I saw Danny do a demo out there. I've seen you do a couple of keynotes and several boardroom demos. It's a fascinating product. I'm looking forward to sharing this information with the listeners. I've seen you guys win countless awards at these events through the boardrooms. Best product, best boardroom, best presentations. Obviously, the rubber ducky presentation goes over real well. We'll talk about that one too. So
Best looking
presenter.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I think didn't
most Irish
didn't you
presenter.
win best in show at MES in the fall here in San Antonio?
One or two of them.
Yeah,
One or two of them.
I thought so. Well, we've gotten to know a lot of you guys from you to Danny to David Couvert over there. We love David, Allie, Tate, Haley. All you guys are great. Thanks again for caring enough to help us grow this podcast. And we're just looking forward to getting into it. So, man, welcome to the show, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Danny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
Wait,
a rough one.
deepfake Danny?
No.
Maybe deepfake Danny.
Deepfake. No, don't mention deepfake, Danny. You'll get me in trouble. But no, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely, man. So let's just start with a simple one, man. Why don't we start with who is Rob Allen and how did you become a part of Threatlocker and the role that you do today?
Well, you could say a series of fortunate events got me to where I am. I mean, I've known Danny probably the best part of 15 years now. I work for a IT company, an MSP, back home in Ireland, and we were one of his first customers for one of his previous endeavors, email security company that he built basically from the ground up. He built it himself. It was pretty self-evident at that point that he was an extremely clever individual, given that he literally built this thing from nothing. And I basically kept somewhat in touch with him. I mean, I worked fairly closely with him for 3 or 4 years at that point. He then moved on and obviously did bigger and better things. And we sort of loosely kept connected during that time. About 5 years ago now, he contacted me pretty out of the blue. Told me what he was doing with Threatlocker, explained where it was going, asked me if I'd be interested in joining, basically running their European or Threatlocker's European operations. Sounded like a incredibly exciting opportunity, and one that I am very grateful every day that I took him up on, because it's been incredible. I mean, literally making a difference in people's lives is probably the most gratifying thing that you can do. And there is absolutely no doubt that what we do makes a change in people's lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't argue that. I mean, when you see what this product is capable of doing, you know, it's definitely, it's a game changer in cybersecurity. So that's awesome.
Yeah, well, to be honest, probably the most common feedback that we get, and one of the great things about events like MES is that we get to talk to customers, we get to talk to people who use it, and probably the most common and most welcome feedback I get from customers is that we help them sleep at night.
Yeah.
And you couldn't say anything better to me or nicer to me than we help them sleep
Yeah, that's
at
a
night,
good thing.
knowing that we're securing their environment. So yeah, it's incredibly gratifying. But as I said, a series of fortunate events, but I consider myself extremely lucky to both have known Danny, to know Danny, and to effectively have his trust in the role that I'm in at the moment.
Yeah. And that product, like when you watch a demo, when you see you guys demo it, if you don't really understand the zero trust concepts, you get it after you see the demo. It's pretty apparent.
Demoing is a little bit tricky because basically if you have Threatlocker on a machine and you're demoing this stuff, it's basically loads of things that are not able to happen. So
Yeah.
it's stuff that's
Yeah.
not able to run. It's things like PowerShell that are not able to reach out to the internet. So it's actually a pretty boring and pretty quick demonstration when it's just, look, this can't happen, that can't happen. Look, we've just kept everything safe.
Yeah, I like
So-
how in your demo you guys have to always say, okay, now we're going to turn Threatlocker on.
Yeah, well, that's the point.
Yeah.
We do it the other way around. So we start with, look, here it is with no Threatlocker, and then we show all the scary
Right.
stuff, and then we go, okay, right, boring bit now. Here's it with Threatlocker and all these things not able to happen.
Yeah, true. So let's get into that. So let's hear from you, your view of zero trust. What does it mean in your mind?
Well, as you said, I mean, you perfectly described it. So it's not a product. It's not something you can go out and buy. You can't just go, to a vendor and say, hey, I want some zero trust, please, or I want all the zero trust. I mean, it just doesn't exist. It is a way of looking at things. It is an approach. It is, as I said, it's a way of looking at things is probably the best way to describe it. It's a journey, not a destination, is another way to describe it as well, because I mean, you're never going to, or unlikely to ever actually be at a point where you say, I'm all zero trust now, I'm completely zero trust, I've nothing else to worry about. That realistically doesn't exist. But as you said, default deny is a really great way to describe it. I mean, another way to look at it is to assume breach.
Mm-hmm.
So work on the principle that the bad guys are already in. They're on your network right now. They got full, domain admin access to your servers. What can they do? And if you look at it from that perspective, then basically everything that we do makes complete sense in terms of limiting access and blocking things from running and all that kind of stuff. So that's another really good way to think about it. Is it's just assume breach, work on the principle they're already in. But again, default deny is a really good and simple way to describe it to people. So instead of default permit, which is basically 99% of other security tools that are out there, are literally that. They're default permit. So allow everything to run unless we know it's bad, or allow everything to happen unless it's known to be bad or malicious. And unfortunately, that has been proved time and time and time again not to work.
Well, yeah, you're taking a reactive approach when that's the case, and that's not always the best way to do security, right? I mean, you should be
Correct.
more proactive.
And what I would sort of add to that, I would absolutely agree. It's not the best way. It is a way. There is value in reactive. There is value in responding to things that are happening. But our way of looking at things is that reactiveness should be based on things that are not able to happen instead of being based on things that have been able to happen, if that makes sense. So ideally, you want to get notifications, you want to get phone calls from your MDR team going, hey, somebody tried to run an IP scanner on a server here, did you know about it? Or you've got incoming connections on RDP, or whatever the case may be. Things that are being blocked rather than things that have just happened and are happening. You don't want to get a call going, hey, there's ransomware running on your box right now. You want to get a call going, hey, somebody tried to run ransomware in your box right now and it's been blocked. So there is value in that approach, but we just think that the value is in combination with, or in addition to, primary controls, which is fundamentally what allow listing and ring fencing and most of the other things we do is.
Yeah, I liked when you were talking about it, you were saying just assume breach. And the thing that stood out to me was, assume your perimeter sucks. And they're already it because your perimeter's not stopping anything.
Not even just your perimeter, your employees.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I mean, first of all, the dissolution of the perimeter is a thing. I mean, gone are the days when you could hide everyone behind a perimeter firewall or something, because people work from home, they work from Starbucks, they work from events, everywhere. So you can't hide people behind something like that anymore. Plus, again, you have to consider the insider threat, the fact that your users could well be the source of a breach.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm actually just back yesterday from Brazil, and there was quite a high profile attack on some sort of financial institution, like a bank or a payments company, where basically they got, I think, $140 million, but they paid some dude, like, I think it was $4,000 for access. And I think there's more information kind of coming out about it now, where they literally took a box from from a bank and like transported it from there to where they could work in it and basically hook it up into everything and full access. But the point is, $4,000 to a guy in there to help them do what they were trying to do.
Threat type scenario then, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Rob, you said something in a recent interview that I wanted you to elaborate on today, and you said that if you could get people to understand one thing, it would be that we can't know, and nobody knows all the bad things. And you said, and you just hit on this a second ago. We were talking about perimeter security. Most cybersecurity to date is based on that understanding that we can know all the bad things. But that's not true.
Well, I think the evidence would suggest that we can't. I mean, there's something like 160,000 new pieces of malware released every single day. I mean, how do you possibly keep up with that? I mean, it's basically impossible. Plus, you've got all the complications and, from things like polymorphic malware. You know what I mean? People are using AI now to create polymorphic malware. We did an amazing webinar with David Bomball and a guy called Jacoby. Jacoby he was like Hack5's Hacker of the Year many, many years in a row, but he came up with this absolutely incredible piece of polymorphic PowerShell. So basically you reach out to an API and every time it reached out, it would get a new piece of PowerShell that was basically a reverse shell. So every single time it was different. Never once was it exactly the same. Didn't get picked up by anything at all. So he tested it against every major EDR, every AV, everything. Nothing picked this up as being malicious because it had never been seen before. I mean, it's basically what it means. It's what polymorphic means. Is it's changing constantly.
There's no signature at all for that. Yeah.
But the amazing thing was we gave him an environment running Threatlocker to try and do this thing. And we were, to be honest, I'm not going to say I was convinced that he was going to be able to, but I mean, this guy is an absolute genius. And I figured if anyone could do it, Jacoby could do it. But everything he tried, every time he tried to do it, it was basically just blocked. And he was convinced, he was absolutely convinced that we were doing some amazing behavioral analytics and we could see it was bad. And I had to say to him, I felt quite bad. I was like, Jacoby, we're not doing any of those things. We're basically just blocking PowerShell from accessing the internet. It's no more complicated than that. But it's a really good example. I mean, it is cybersecurity in general is and can seem like a really complicated problem because of all the new threats, all of the new techniques, tactics, all the new things the bad guys are doing. But very often, complex problems can have very simple solutions. And in this case, the very simple solution was not figuring out is this behavior good or bad. The simple solution was basically just blocking PowerShell from accessing the internet.
Just don't allow anything, right? Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, interesting because that conversation brings up a thought I was having last night. I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine in cybersecurity, and we were talking about an AI different solution where he wanted to totally embed locally an LLM that can do a lot of different things into a Raspberry Pi device that he can build into a badge that he has, right? And he could talk to it and communicate with it. He wanted to know how to do that. So I was telling him how you could go about doing it, but it brought up another part of the conversation in terms of security, thinking about, to that point, if you don't have to connect to the internet in order to have the ability to do this polymorphic work, right? You have an LLM smart enough that's been trained, that can do that on the fly. Now you have a different problem where you can embed and push and plant and time bomb, and then how do you detect it, right? So it's all of those types of things that I think we have on the horizon to look forward to have to try to mitigate.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact is the threat landscape is constantly changing. Yeah. And if your approach is to constantly adapt to all of those constant changes, then you're always playing catch up. Yeah, so that's why being proactive rather than reactive is so effective, and why default deny. And just to clarify, default deny, this, and you mentioned this at the very start, there is a important aspect to default deny, which is default deny but permit by exception. So default deny is what's going to keep organizations safe. Permit by exception is what allows them or what enables them to do what they need to do. Yeah. And that is really important, because people hear default deny and they go, oh my God, that sounds really scary. I mean, I won't be able to do anything. But the fact is you can do what you need to do, but no more.
Right.
And that's the important, the really important, often not fully understood aspect to this is, I mean, look, the vast majority of people do the same things with the same software every single day. I mean, look, I consider myself a pretty advanced user. I mean, I probably use maybe 10 or 15 different programs a day on my machine. Couple of browsers, video conferencing tools, Teams, Zoom, Notepad++, Hyper-V, Acrobat, Probably not much
Right.
more than that, realistically. And fundamentally, Threatlocker doesn't stop me from doing any of those things. It will stop me from downloading and running a random coupon clipper or some remote access tool. But I mean, that's exactly what you want, or for that matter, ransomware. But that's exactly what you want. You want to enable users to do what they need to do and no more.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So you did a good job of explaining that too. Now, like the allowing access to what you need to have access to, permitting that through things like an allow list. But explain a little bit more about ring fencing and how that plays a role in what you guys are doing.
Sure. So one of the things that sort of, I suppose, sets Threatlocker aside and apart from other tools, I mean, there are other ways of doing allow listing out there. I mean, I would argue that none of them are as good or none of them are as convenient or as manageable as Threatlocker. I mean, there was one example of a big organization that got hit as part of a ransomware attack recently. Won't get into too much specifics, but I mean, they lost hundreds of millions in this attack. And we'd actually spoken to them on a few different occasions, and they'd said to us that they really like what you do. It's a really good idea, but unfortunately, we're very deep into a process or a project to implement Microsoft's AppLocker. So they realized the default deny that allow listing was a good idea, but the tool that they had chosen to do it was AppLocker. Now, they were 4 years into a project trying to implement AppLocker in their environment. And they obviously figured this sunk cost was too big. There's no way we're going to back out of it at this stage. We're going to keep going. We're going to get AppLocker operational. Less than a year later, they're victims of a cyber attack that has cost them, at current estimate, several $100 million.
Wow.
So the point is, there are other tools out there to do it. Again, I would argue that none of them offer the convenience or the manageability of Threatlocker. But sorry, to your question about ring fencing, the thing that does, apart from the convenience and ease of implementation that Threatlocker offers, the other thing that Threatlocker does is we expand on that principle of default deny. So default deny is and can be what can run and what can't run. That's allow listing. But you can also apply to other areas. So like default deny to what things can do when they are running is what ring fencing is. So like PowerShell we mentioned earlier, and the fact that we block PowerShell from accessing the internet. Most environments, PowerShell does not need to access the internet. But in most environments, PowerShell absolutely can access the internet. So it can download payloads, it can run remote code, it can exfiltrate data happily. And generally speaking, there's nothing there to stop it. And PowerShell is one of hundreds of different pieces of software on people's machines that could, in theory, be weaponized. I mean, curl can be used for exfiltrating data or uploading data. There's, reg serve run DLL. There's command prompt. I mean, there's dozens of things built into Windows, but there's also things like, say, PuTTY, for example. I mean, PuTTY can be used for data exfiltration. It can be used for transferring data. I mean, does it need to reach, even if you do absolutely need to run it, which some organizations and some users may do, does it need to be able to reach out to the entire internet? So what ring fencing allows you to do is it allows you to control what applications, what programs can do when they are running. So does it need to access my files? Well, if it doesn't, default deny, block it from accessing my files and permit by exception. So if it only needs to access this subset of my files, then block it from accessing everything else, allow it to access this. Same with the internet. Does this thing need to reach out and communicate with the entire internet? I mean, the reality is probably not. I mean, probably the best example of this was SolarWinds Orion. So obviously they got into SolarWinds source code and they made changes and adjustments. But one of the adjustments they made is to get people's SolarWinds agents to talk to an external CNC server. Now, if you think about it, the reason that was successful and possible was because people implicitly trusted the SolarWinds agent. So I've got a SolarWinds agent installed on my machine. It can do anything it wants to do, including, in this case, communicate with an external CNC server. Now, the fact of the matter is there's probably a very limited number of places and locations and IP addresses and domains that a SolarWinds agent needs to talk to, none of which include this random external CNC server. So the fact is you can ring fence SolarWinds and say, look, I only wanted to be able to talk to solarwinds.com addresses and don't let it talk to anywhere else. So again, same principle, default deny, which is the blocking from accessing everywhere else, permit by exception, which is let it talk to where it needs to talk to. And that can be applied pretty much to any application that runs on your computer because none of them need to access the entire internet. None of them need, very few of them need to access all of the files on your system or your network. So again, it's just taking that principle of default deny, expanding on it to give you proper application control. So application control, as I said, isn't just what can run or what can't run. It's also what things can do when they are running.
Yeah, that's a very good
I
explanation.
love that level of granularity, because, as admins, it's never as simple as just block this or allow this. It's you need that level of flexibility, because, hey, we need that to do our jobs, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Going back to your deny by default and allow by exception, that makes sense to us. It makes sense to us as engineers trying to run an operation. But there will be those that will say, but if I'm being blocked every time I need to do something, or if I need to ask permission every time I need to do my job, isn't that going to slow me down? And won't that impact the entire DevOps operation? So what do you guys say to people that will come back with that argument?
No.
You're wrong.
That's the answer.
Yeah. No. So look, you can understand absolutely people being scared, people being reluctant, people thinking this is going to be too much work. I genuinely, hand on heart, it is not. We've got a team of, I've got 60, 70 developers sitting outside my office here. Every single one of them is running Threatlocker on their machines, and Threatlocker is not getting in their way, because we're allowing them to run the things they need to run. We're allowing them to use the tools they need to do, or they need to use. I've even in the most complex of dev environments, we can create what we call custom rules based on, parent process, on path, on the process, on the created by process. So we can use a bunch of different variables to build, as I said, custom definitions that allow their devs to do what they need to do. But again, and no more. And it's the and no more is really important. Look, developers are without a doubt the most challenging environments to whitelist. It doesn't mean it can't be done. And again, developers are very often the most dangerous in environments because of the nature of the tools that they run or the tools that they have to run. But again, it doesn't need to get in the way. It doesn't need to slow them down. In some cases, it can actually be a really useful tool to get them to standardize what they do and where they work. Because I've worked with customers and they've got a bunch of developers, and they've got 50 developers, for argument's sake, and those developers work in 50 different ways, because one of them might have everything in C dev, one might have it in C dev root, one might have it in C dev dev root, one might have it in their OneDrive folder, and another might keep it somewhere else entirely. Things are everywhere. Whereas if you put a restriction in place, or you put something in place to say that, well, look, you have to work from your OneDrive folder /dev, and anything in there that you do using your development tools is going to be fine. That will very quickly get them to standardize and do what you're looking for them to do, because they won't be able to do the things that they were doing previously. So it's a really useful tool to standardize and put a rein on what they're doing and say, look, work like this, you're going to be fine. Don't work like this, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. This is how you do it. You don't go outside the lines. So that brings up another question, though. As a developer, you could be working on a lot of different things or doing a lot of different things. What happens, or how do your developers backtrace or figure out where there might be hangups in the work that they're doing, where Threatlocker is stopping them? So I'm doing some work, maybe I'm doing an outbound communication or within network communication. It was working, it's not working, or it should be working. I don't know where it's broken at in this life cycle chain. How what tools do they have to figure that stuff out?
Well, there's two places. First of all, the user themselves, they have access to the Threatlocker tray. Threatlocker tray will show them everything Threatlocker blocks, fundamentally. So I want to see if Threatlocker blocks something, I just go into the tray. I can see a real-time system, or what we call real-time unified audit, and I can see everything that's been allowed and everything, hypothetically, that may have been blocked. And the other places, obviously, the administrators can look for this through the unified audit online. So they'd be able to see, again, is there something being blocked on Rob's machine that I need to create an exception for? But I suppose the beauty about the onboarding of Threatlocker is that you see all of these things during onboarding. So you see all of these things ideally while you are setting up policies, while things are not actually being blocked. It's that you take that time, it can be 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever the case may be, to build out policies to allow your devs or your users to do what they need to do, and get to the point where realistically nothing would be blocked. So you don't turn it on until you're sure and confident that it's not going to cause any problems.
So you're basically putting it in monitor mode and then monitoring everything and then setting up all your policies.
Correct.
So to address anything that you've captured during that
makes
time
sense.
frame.
Exactly. And look, there will always be exceptions, and there will always be times when, something unexpected or they do something differently. And again, it's really, really easy to both identify that and allow it. I mean, identifying it, as I said, it's as easy going into the tray of the unified audit and allowing it, 2 seconds to add something to a policy.
Nice. Rob, you said something earlier with Jacoby and how he was trying to get around some of the and had already proven that he could get around some of the best EDRs in the world with his technique, with the ransomware or with the PowerShell script. And then in MES last week, you said something very interesting, actually answering a question from somebody in the room, one of the boardrooms, related to EDRs. And they had asked, Jason, they asked, could Threatlocker technically replace an EDR? If you're thinking about implementing some high-end new EDR, you could name a dozen of them that are out there, but you decided, I think I'd rather implement Threatlocker instead. Could you do just Threatlocker without the EDR? I was surprised by your answer that there are actually people out there doing that.
Well, you see, Threatlocker also has its own EDR. So we have what we call Threatlocker Detect. So beauty about Threatlocker Detect in relation to Threatlocker is obviously you can use all of the things that Threatlocker does within your detect and response. So you can apply allow listing policies, for example, or network control policies or storage control policies that are all part of the core platform. You can apply them as responses in Threatlocker Detect. So I detect PowerShells being used for malicious purposes on this machine. I want to apply a ring fencing policy to it, or an application control policy to block it, or whatever the case may be. But I mean, we do have lots of customers who run Threatlocker successfully and happily alongside EDRs. So again, the idea being that it's layered, properly layered, and different layers of security. We have lots of customers who will just run Threatlocker alongside something like an antivirus. But we have a lot of customers now, since Threatlocker Detect has been a thing, who will use Threatlocker as both, because they only want one portal to manage, one product to understand, one bill to pay, one agent on their machine. I mean, there's a lot of plus points to having everything under the one umbrella. So you've got your controls and your detection within the one platform. So yeah, we've a lot of customers who are just running Threatlocker and Threatlocker Detect, instead of running, Threatlocker alongside EDR. But there's no one right answer. You know what I mean? There's no, it doesn't matter what other tool you're running, whether you're running a CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or a Sophos or whatever the case may be. You're running them, you're completely happy with them, but there's still a nagging doubt at the back of your mind that, look, this may not catch or stop everything. Then run them alongside the Threatlocker. Or, as I said, if you want to save yourself some money and have everything in one agent, etc., then you can absolutely do it all using Threatlocker.
Has Detect been out very long?
No right answer. Detect has been a thing for well over 2 years now.
2 years ago? Okay.
Yeah, so we started doing MDR last Zero Trust World, which would be last February, March time. And Detect was the thing for probably a year before that. I mean, Detect made a huge amount of sense for us as a business because, I mean, fundamentally, we have and have always had a phenomenal amount of data, a phenomenal amount of information. We can see when things are running, we can see when things are blocked from being running. So there's some really valuable data there, or information in the unified audit. Now, pre-Detect, apart from making that information visible and accessible and searchable, we didn't really do very much with it. So, as the example I gave earlier, very often a very early indicator of compromise is something like an Nmap or an IP scanner running. So we would have blocked that, unless somebody went looking for denies in the unified audit, nobody would have known about it. But it's valuable information, and it was useful or made sense to say to people, well, look, if, for example, an IP scanner runs or Nmap runs or whatever the case may be, or, something, event logs get cleared on the server or something like that. If those things happen, well, I want to know about it because you can see it. So why don't you tell us? So it was a logical extension, plus the fact that, as I said, a lot of people did want to get rid of or do away with whatever other EDR they were using. It makes sense for us, or made sense for us, to make that a a thing.
Yeah, that type of information.
So that's interesting. I think it covers an area too, because we talked about this at the very beginning, that people are still a threat. People are still a threat. And if they don't set the policies up accurately or make mistakes in those policies, there's a gap. And that gap can only be filled in if they have absolutely no knowledge of the fact that they didn't set it up correctly. That gap can only be filled with a detect response model somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean,
right?
we often jokingly refer to our MDR department as the configuration police.
Yeah,
Because a lot of what they're doing is ringing to tell people, hey, did you know you made this dumb misconfiguration?
Exactly.
So did you know that RDP is exposed to the internet, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
Interestingly, we did, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it separately later, but we have added probably our most recent addition to the platform is what we call DAC, Defense Against Configurations. And that is an automated method of checking those configurations. I think we're up to about 150 daily, or 150 checks per machine per day for common misconfigurations, whether it be within Threatlocker or not within Threatlocker. So, you know, as I said, things like, is default deny turned on? Is the machine secured? If it's not, that's a misconfiguration and something that you want to know about. But it could be things like, you know, is RDP enabled? Is SMB allowed to all devices when you could have it just allowed to a limited number of devices? So a bunch of configuration checks that are done daily automatically and then mapped against different frameworks. You know what I mean? So if you're particularly interested in NIST or whatever the case may be, you can see, look, well, here are all the NIST related pieces of advice and where our configurations may fall down.
Well, and it probably helps with reporting too. So like if you're doing your SOC reports, then you have a list of things that are 100% covered.
It's all very well and good. You say you do something like we remove all local administrators. This will actually check and see if you're doing the things that you say you do.
Yeah.
I thought really interesting. So one of the, it's quite interesting when some organizations, big and small, actually come around. How would I describe it? Come around to our way of thinking. So I was at the Gartner SRM event, and one of the presentations by one of the really good Gartner guys, two things that were particularly interesting. One was he was talking about the interaction between Office and PowerShell. And the interaction between Office and PowerShell is something that we've been talking about forever. It's a pretty basic part of ring fencing, is to block application interaction, stop lateral movement between applications. I mean, if you do that, you're stopping a lot of attacks at source. But the other really interesting thing, and it was a couple of days before we actually announced and released DAC, Defense Against Configurations, was they said that 61% of, I think it was CISOs, had said or had experienced some sort of cyber breach or cyber attack as a direct result of a misconfiguration. Direct result of a misconfiguration.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, that's...
But the main thing about misconfigurations is, generally speaking, you don't know they're misconfigured until it's too late.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So that's what DAC is designed for, is to tell you about these misconfigurations before it's too late.
Yeah. So one thing I want to bring up for the audience is, you know, we're talking a lot about zero trust and how Threatlocker fills the gaps and applies zero trust for an enterprise. But we're also bringing up some very important challenges that we all face, that we all have to mitigate on a regular basis, regardless of what solutions you're using. These are common things that we all face, that regardless of what you have in place, you need to stay aware and cognizant of it so that you can apply the right strategy for your organization. So I wanted to bring that up real quick. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit and get into the rubber ducky conversation. Kevin and I have seen that demo.
Cool.
That was impressive.
It's very cool.
The rubber duckies.
Yeah, those. So,
oh my God, this is probably my favorite. My Bucky's,
yes.
Oh,
it's a staple here in Texas.
Right.
Bucky's.
Yes, indeed.
But we've seen that, and it's like a magic trick, right? When you see it happen, you're like, oh my gosh, that is cool. That works. And again, it's one of those things that you start to understand how Threatlocker solves that problem. But for our audience, give them a little bit of a review on why doesn't the rubber ducky trick work against Threatlocker?
So, I mean, for those who don't know, Rubber Ducky is effectively a keyboard. It's a keyboard that can be pre-programmed with commands. So you plug it into a computer. It's not detected as a storage device. So any storage blocking isn't going to fix it. It's basically just going to be picked up as a keyboard, and that keyboard is going to start typing commands. Really clever tech. I mean, the guys that do it, Hack5, have got some amazing hacking tools with some amazing names, I hasten to add. So, bash bunnies and keyboard crocs and all manner of cool stuff. So check them out. The Hack5 is really good. But the point about a rubber ducky, so first of all, its keyboard will just start typing commands. We don't block that. We don't stop that. We don't do anything about that. What we do, though, is the next thing. And what you have to consider is the next thing that will happen. Now, very often it's a PowerShell command going to try and download a payload, or it's a PowerShell command that's going to try and exfiltrate data, or it's going to use curl to do this, or it's going to... Basically, all of those things is what's called living off the land. All of those things that are on your computer already, it's going to try and use them against you. So the example that we've often used, or we've always used, is basically just exfiltration using PowerShell. So go through my documents folder and upload everything to this location online. It's incredibly difficult to detect and stop. And I actually do have an interesting story to tell you about this in a second. But the point is, we don't stop the rubber ducky from being connected because, I mean, realistically, you can't block keyboards. You could, but that would be a pretty big blocker to productivity, I would imagine. Yeah. So
definitely
short of blocking keyboards, what can you do? Well, as I said, it's the next thing that happens, which is very often a PowerShell or something like that, trying to do a next step. And if you can stop that next step, you're effectively stopping that rubber ducky from being in any way effective. But there's some really interesting ones. Like rubber ducky is one thing. I mean, that does require somebody to plug something into your machine. You've also got, I think I've got one of them here, OMG cables.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Same company make them. OMG cables are again like a rubber ducky on steroids, because there's literally a wireless adapter built into this, which means you can connect to it from outside in the street. Does the same thing though. But the interesting thing about the data exfiltration, which is what we've been using for years, for years to explain to people, is we became aware about a year ago. So we've been talking about this for 3-4 years, and basically we've been doing what we call the ducky challenge with people. And the ducky challenge is basically, look here, plug this into the computer. You think your cybersecurity tool is that hot? Let's see what happens. The challenge part is if we the challenge part is if we win, we get to keep your data. If you win, you get to keep the rubber ducky. And most sensible people will kind of laugh politely and say, hey, there's no way you're going to plug that into my computer. But we've had dozens of people who've let us plug it into the computer. And as I said, in basically every case, it was absolutely successful. But we did have so word got back to me about 8-9 months ago saying that, hey, tool X has now started recognizing this data exfiltration via PowerShell as being bad and is stopping it. So at the time, my solution was to go on to ChatGPT and basically ask it for other methods of doing this. So it basically gave me a Python method. It gave me a batch file version that used curl. It gave me a custom executable, which was actually quite fun. So basically just C# code for a custom executable. Gave me about 5 or 6 different ways of doing it to get around the fact that tool X now starts blocking this. But we had one of our special ops guys working on this quite recently to give us new versions and new ways of doing it. And one of the things that we're doing is basically demonstrating effectively ransomware using 7-zip, because 7-zip has all of the characteristics of ransomware. You can encrypt data, you can delete data, you can transfer data. So they basically use 7-zip to encrypt and compress into one file the contents of a user's folder instead of uploading all of the individual files separately. And what we discovered was Tool X, which had been detecting the exfiltration when it was many files, does not detect the exfiltration when it is a single file.
That's interesting.
So there's obviously something built into their logic where if it's over whatever number, it's going to say this is bad and we need to stop it. But if you just upload one file, it's suddenly not bad. So it's a really good example of why, again, detection and decisions are hard.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, going back to the challenge of the Rubber Ducky Challenge, I know you guys have offered this to a lot of people, and you even offered it in a couple of the older boardrooms we sat in. It's cool to see it in action, but you guys actually had some people, I heard you talking about this on another interview you did, where some folks in Dubai and a couple in Barcelona actually took you guys up on that challenge, and they
Oh, quite
yeah.
often. For some reason, so Danny's often offered. Nobody's ever done it for Danny, but for some reason, I don't know if I'm more trustworthy, but I've had at least 10 or 15 different people who volunteered and allowed us to plug it in. It's quite funny. I mean, one of the first time, so the first time that somebody ever said yes, basically, and allowed us to plug it in was in Dubai. So I did a presentation. I kind of made that challenge or joke on stage. And by the time I got back to the booth, there was a dude standing there going, I wanted you to plug that into my computer. And I was like, really? Okay. So plugged it in and got his data. And those guys are now one of our biggest customers in that part of the world, which is pretty
That's
cool.
awesome.
But no, we had, I mean, it's quite funny, the, I suppose, undeserved confidence that some people will have in whatever tools they're running. I mean, again, we've often had people running Tool X, and we'd be at an event and Threatlocker would be here at our booth and Tool X will be there in their booth. And they go, yeah, we're using that, so it's definitely not going to work. Plug it in and see what happens. So we plug it in, data gets exfiltration, and they go marching from us to them going, what the hell? How has this just happened?
Wow.
So there's so many different examples of that. It was really interesting. There was only once. So in all of the time that we've been doing this and all the time we've been challenging people, there's only been one instance of somebody winning. Okay.
Ooh,
so
I wanna
basically
hear
it
this.
being blocked. It was it was really interesting. So this German guy, so we one of the events we were at, we basically said, look, the challenge is this, but we will also throw in the fact that if you win, we will fly you to Orlando for Zero Trust World next year. So basically sweeten the deal somewhat. So we had a bunch of different people offered at that stage. We had to exclude the Threatlocker customers because all the clever people were going, yeah, do plug it into my machine and nothing will happen. But anyway, this German guy came up, and he basically had a really weird, obscure piece of German software that blocked anything from being connected on USB. Keyboards, mouse, didn't make any difference. It basically blocked everything from being connected. It actually fundamentally made a Windows machine behave like a Mac does, because, you know, when you plug a USB device into a Mac, it goes, hey, new device connected. Do you want to allow this? It's effectively the same thing, but for Windows. Now, the interesting thing was, so the rubber ducky didn't work because it popped up going, yeah, new device connected. Do you want to allow it to connect? And he said no, and therefore, you know, exfiltration couldn't happen. So he won, and we flew him to Zero Trust World. I think it was last year. But the interesting thing was, we did try the actual PowerShell part of the rubber ducky. So we said, look, okay, yeah, fair play. You won. Okay, you're coming to Zero Trust World. Let's just try the actual data exfiltration part. So let's try the PowerShell command. Ran the PowerShell command, no problem. Uploaded his data.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, he both won and lost.
So yeah, he found a workaround for you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's cool.
So, you know, going forward in this, thinking about organizations thinking about switching to Zero Trust, what would be some of the common pitfalls that you would warn them against?
Pitfalls? That's a good question. I mean, well, I suppose step one is always going to be making the decision, deciding this is what we want to do. I think realistically, more and more organizations are kind of coming around to that way of thinking anyway. So that's very often the first step. The other thing is, I mean, probably before you can apply any sort of controls, you need visibility. You need to know what's there, because if you don't know what's there, then how do you block everything that's not needed? So that's one of the things that the Threatlocker agent does really well. It'll log everything that it sees in the environment. It'll create policies automatically. It'll do all that heavy lifting for you basically in the background. But it's really interesting. There's always a surprise there. No matter who the customer is, big or small, there's always something running on their machines that they had absolutely no idea about. Very often it's many somethings that are running on their machines that they'd absolutely no idea about. I mean, remote access tools are probably the most pertinent example of that. I mean, I've spoken to organizations who've had, 6, 7 different remote access tools running on their machines, not just sitting around in downloads folders, actively running on their computers. And look, we all know how it happens. I mean, look, I was an IT guy for long enough to know how it happens, which is very often some third party, I need to access your computer to fix a problem with this software. So would you just install TeamViewer for me? Gets installed, gets forgotten about, sits there forever as a potential way into that network, and multiply that by, X number of different tools. on extra or different machines. And a customer I worked with in the UK, they had, I think it was 6 or 7 different remote access tools. Their MSP's remote access tool, their previous MSP's remote access tool as well. So not the current one, the previous MSP's remote access tool, but they had TeamViewer running on 20% of their machines. 20% of the machines were using TeamViewer. Now, they did not use TeamViewer.
Oh, wow.
There was no good reason for TeamViewer to be installed in their machines, or their MSP didn't use TeamViewer, but it was for that very reason, which is at some point in the past, somebody decided they needed for whatever purpose, and it got installed and sat there running forever. I mean, I use this phrase to describe a number of cyber attacks, but one of my favorite cyber attacks was one on a water treatment facility here in Florida, and it was described as an advanced cyber attack.
Yeah, we know about that one, Jason.
Yeah. We talk about that one often.
Yeah, cyber attack,
Advanced, so advanced.
And it turned out it was literally just somebody got into a TeamViewer account and was logged in and started playing with the levels of chemicals. Now, very serious and very dangerous. And luckily enough, there was somebody watching them do it, but it was no more advanced than getting into a TeamViewer account.
Right. Can you imagine if there wasn't an administrator in there to see the mouse moving on the screen?
Absolutely. As I said, I have in my head when I think about that, the picture that's in my head is Homer Simpson sitting there looking at things happening on the screen. But I mean, it's a really good, but also quite terrifying example of how things like TeamViewer can be misused.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how it happens. I mean, realistically, TeamViewer will pop up, your computer will boot up and TeamViewer will pop up and it'll ask you to sign in, and people are, I don't know what to sign in with. And then, they'll put in a personal account, or they'll sign up with a personal account, and they'll use the same username and power, email address and password that they've used on 50 other websites. And all of a sudden, one of those 50 websites get compromised and those credentials are out there, and somebody tries it in TeamViewer and boom, next minute they're into a water treatment facility and playing with the chemicals.
Man, that's crazy. Well, Rob, this has been awesome. I know that if people didn't know anything about Zero Trust, or certainly about Threatlocker, now they do, which is a good thing for all of us. I want to take a really quick break and come back. And if you don't mind, we want to run you through a lightning round of questions, which is usually pretty fun because it involves us asking questions really quickly and you just saying what comes to mind first. And it's always a lot of fun.
Okay, I'm worried now, but that's okay.
All right, cool. I'm glad you're willing to play, though. That's good. All right, so we'll be right back. We'll do that. Take a quick break here. We'll see you in a few.
Do zero-day exploits and supply chain attacks keep you up at night? Worry no more. You can harden your security with Threatlocker. Imagine taking a proactive, deny-by-default approach to cybersecurity, blocking every action, process, and user unless specifically authorized by your team. Threatlocker helps you do this and provides a full audit of every action, allowed or blocked, for risk management and compliance. Onboarding and operation is fully supported by their US-based support team. Stop the exploitation of trusted applications within your organization to keep you running efficiently and secure, protected from ransomware. Worldwide, companies like JetBlue trust Threatlocker to secure their data and keep their business operations flying high. To learn more about how Threatlocker can mitigate unknown threats and ensure compliance for your organization, visit threatlocker.com.
Welcome back from our break. We are here talking with Mr. Rob Allen from Threatlocker. We've had some awesome conversations so far on the topic of Zero Trust and on the magic that Threatlocker can offer in that area for you and your organization. So what we're going to do now, though, is we're going to do something a little bit different. Jason and I have done this with some of our guests before, never with Rob. So this could be fun. We're going to hit Rob with what we call our rapid fire questions. And Rob's just going to say whatever comes to mind first. Good, bad, or indifferent. And this should be pretty funny. We've got about 10 or 15 of these questions, Rob. So just whatever comes to mind. Doesn't have to be PG rated, by the way. You just say whatever Rob wants to say.
I'm not getting canceled today. I don't know about you.
Perfect. All right. So here's the first one, and I'll start, and then Jason will hit you right after that, and we'll just alternate. So first question is, what's the worst password you've ever seen?
I'll give two answers to that. One is I presume everybody here knows about Have I Been Pwned?
Oh yeah.
The website. So apparently I've been pwned on many occasions. Most of them, as you know, they're basically roll-ups or, collections of previous breaches. But I was breached on, I think, 2 or 3 occasions back in the early 2010s, I believe. But the approach that I used to take, and I don't do this anymore, but the approach at that stage I would take to passwords is for certain things I'd have, good passwords or, hard passwords, certain things that have throwaway passwords, because they're things I didn't give a shit about. So
Right.
I just tried to call myself cancel things I didn't care about. And so therefore, for the things I didn't care about, I just had password 123. So a lot of my Have I Been Pwned passwords are my email address and password 123. Not that I'd ever use that anymore. But second answer to the question is we took a lot back in my MSP days when I worked for the company back in Ireland. We took a bunch of customers and this made a deal with this other MSP and they gave us a bunch of their customers. Their passwords across the board, all of these different companies were capital P, password 0, 1. Password 1.
Those are 2 of the most common too on the list, on the password list that you see.
Oh yeah,
on the dictionary text.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not surprised by those 2. Yeah.
All right. What's more dangerous, complacency or complexity?
I'm going to go with complacency, as long as there's no follow-up questions.
No,
that's it.
No, but here's your follow-up. If you weren't in cybersecurity, Rob, what would you be doing today?
I am in the very fortunate position of basically doing what I love for a job. So computers are my hobby, and have always been, and I'm just extremely fortunate and lucky to basically get paid for doing what I love and doing what I would be doing anyway. So if I wasn't doing it for a job, basically I'd be doing it for a hobby.
You'd be doing it anyway. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair
that's
enough.
Good.
Fair enough.
All right. What tech buzzword makes you just roll your eyes when you hear it?
AI.
AI.
Yeah, that's one.
AI or AI snake oil?
Well, AI infused, powered by AI.
Yeah.
Our AI is bigger than your AI.
Yeah.
You name it. AI.
Yeah.
Reminds me of some of the buzzwords you see on bags of chips and Gatorade bottles, right? Infused.
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, Rob, what is the biggest threat in cybersecurity today?
AI.
Hey.
There you go. That was an easy one.
But infused.
Yeah.
Well,
infused.
Sorry. Okay. Just to elaborate a little bit on that. So first of all, there is the perception that AI will solve all problems, which it very much isn't. I mean, fundamentally, it makes very often the same bad decisions or wrong decisions as anything else does. But there's also the fact that it is being used by attackers. It is lowering the bar of entry to cyber attacks, to people who never would have been able to do it before. Interesting example. So one of the things that we show people, I hope this isn't too long for a fast question or
no,
rapid
go
fire
for it. Go for it.
Well, yeah, one of the things we show people is how you trick ChatGPT into giving you effectively code for malware. So we get ChatGPT to give us code for reverse shell, for example. But I've also become aware of and have started having fun with a local LLM thing called Wizard Vicuna. And Wizard Vicuna, particularly the uncensored version of Wizard Vicuna, will happily give you the code for ransomware. There's no restrictions built in. So you literally say, can I have Rust code for C# code for ransomware? It just gives it to you. But a little test that I did at the time when I spanned this up, I was like, holy shit, it'll give me code for ransomware. So I said, can I have the ingredients for meth? And it wouldn't give them to me. Well, I was like,
hey, you got to draw the line somewhere.
Why won't
right?
you give me the instructions for ingredients for meth? And I was like, meth is really dangerous and this and that. And I was like, okay, so obviously there is somewhere between ransomware and meth, there is a line.
Yeah, there's a line.
I don't know exactly where that line is. Maybe it's closer to ransomware. Maybe it's closer to meth. I'm not sure. But yeah, there is a line somewhere between ransomware and meth where Wizard Vicuna Uncensored refuses to cross.
Wizard Vicuna,
by
the hacker's favorite GPT.
All right. So, what is the first thing you'd lock down in a network?
SMB, file shares.
Yep.
Because remote encryption is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Microsoft themselves, they release this digital defense report every year. Actually, this year's one will be coming up soon. I think it was around October last year they released the last one. And one of the things they mentioned in it was that 70% of ransomware attacks involved remote encryption. So remote encryption being something unprotected in the network, encrypting data on something that is protected on the network. So it's a huge problem. And if you can secure SMB, so only allow protected devices, basically things that you trust, to access things like SMB or file shares, then you're going to be an awful lot better off.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. MFA fatigue, user problem or design problem?
Yeah, get over it. User problem.
Yeah.
Build a bridge,
absolutely.
get over it. MFA, all the things.
Yeah. All the things.
Mm-hmm.
Should we trust AI and cybersecurity? We already heard part of this answer.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So two examples. One was, I'd love to be able to show you this, but I'll explain it. There was a situation a while ago where ChatGPT, if you asked it how many R's are in the word strawberry, it would say there are, with absolute confidence, there's 2 R's in the word strawberry. Yeah. And you could shout at it, you could cajole, you could say, what the hell are you thinking? Count again. It would be really sarcastic about it. It'd be like, I can see there's some confusion here. Let's go through it step by step. And it would still come up. Eventually it would get to the right answer, which is 3 R's and strawberry. So yeah, as I said, they will make mistakes. They will make mistakes with confidence, and that's the dangerous part.
That is dangerous.
It's funny in that circumstance. It's not funny when it decides that this random executable that's just appeared in somebody's machine is ransomware or not. If it decides wrong, even 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000 times, that's still too many, because that's all it takes for a breach. The other answer is deepfakes. Deepfakes are really scary. So you obviously met deepfake Danny. Don't tell Danny. But yeah, deepfakes are getting really, really good and scarily effective, and they're so easy to do.
Harder to detect, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just flat out
determined. The only way you could tell the difference between that deepfake Danny and the actual Danny was that deepfake Danny was actually saying nice things.
You guys said that. You guys said that last week. That was
that was an absolute giveaway. But apart from that, there was. I mean, you would genuinely, if you didn't know, you would believe it was him.
So real quick, I don't want to detract too far, but from a security standpoint, I wanted to bring up watermarking, for example. And so there's Google's kind of leading in charge right now with the tech to do that. Part of the challenge that I see with watermarking is, in theory, that would solve the problems, like even on deepfakes, because if it was generated by AI, there would be a watermark that could be detected. But the challenge is whatever is generating it has to also provide the tools to detect, right? There's both ways. So it only works in benefit of a isolated group of products.
Yeah, so this tool and that tool and that tool and that tool haven't generated, but what about all the other tools that could have generated? So
almost
it's
like
a great idea, but I don't think it's a solution to the problem.
You almost would have to have like a centralized authority controlling it, right? I mean, for that to work.
Yeah.
Because those work so well in all different facets of life.
Oh yeah. Well, we've talked to some people.
We've had some conversations there too. Yeah.
All right, Rob. So would you rather debug someone else's SIM or explain zero trust to your grandma?
Ooh. I think I'd rather explain zero trust to my grandma.
You're a professional at explaining zero trust, so that's a little easier for you.
Yeah. And then they'll be like, okay, I didn't get it, but whatever. Yeah. So it's an easy way out.
Yeah.
Granny, when your phone rings and it says it's a nice man from the bank and he wants to confirm some details with you, hang up.
And do not
trust.
Do not go to Western Center or go buy a gift card.
No, under no circumstances.
All right. What would be the name of your hacker alter ego?
Ooh. My hacker alter ego. I'm not gonna skip it. There was a guy or two guys I used to work with many years ago, and we jokingly referred to them as one as Colonel Panic and the other as General Protection Fault. Now, I think I'm going to steal the Colonel Panic and say my hacker alter ego will be called Colonel Panic.
Okay.
I like that. I like that.
So we need to maybe put that in on Rob's title when we create.
No, don't do that. No, don't do that.
All right, Rob, coffee or energy drinks?
Coffee. I don't know if you can see in there, but yes, most definitely coffee.
That's a lot of coffee right there. I love the tumbler too, by the way. Good job.
It is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is a lot of coffee. All right, what would you enjoy to do? What do you enjoy doing when you unplug from technology?
We'll briefly discuss this, which is I on occasion like to golf.
Mm-hmm.
I used to like to golf a lot more than I now get to golf. Basically, Threatlocker happened, and golf is a thing I used to do rather than the thing I actually do. But no, when I get a chance, golf is kind of my thing.
I feel your pain there, brother. One thing you'd ban from the internet forever.
Ooh, I'm going to be controversial now, and I'm not allowed to be controversial. TikTok. My kids are addicted to TikTok.
I am right there.
You're not the only one. Yeah.
I'm right there.
If I could just block the out of TikTok, I would absolutely do it.
That's a great answer for that.
It's like it's basically like a drug.
Oh, yeah. The algorithm is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They've got it down.
Yeah. So yeah, at the risk of being controversial and saying something that I shouldn't, that would be my personal bye-bye.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. All right, one cybersecurity tool you can't live without.
Ooh, cybersecurity tool. Well, Threatlocker, obviously.
There you go. Okay. So last question, Rob. Last rapid fire. Zero trust in one word.
That's impossible. I need at least 2 words. Yeah, no, I need at least 2 words.
What 2 would you choose?
Ooh.
Default deny.
I was going to say default deny is, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what? Can we go with default -deny, which is technically 1 word?
You're cheating the system a bit, sir.
Well, you asked me an impossible question.
No.
Describe this really well. I was going to say this really complex concept. It's not really a complex concept, but describe this thing that nobody knows and there's been literally books written about in 1 word.
Rob, the lightning round can turn gods into mere mortals. Okay, that's what's happening, but it's okay because it just happens.
As I said, okay. Look, we'll agree for me to cheat the system, which is default.
Okay, you got
there
it.
You
got
go.
it.
All right.
So there you have it, everybody. That's the speed round, Rob Allen style, man. I appreciate you doing that with us. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
it was.
I guess, Jason, what have we not covered? Is that it? We just need to let everybody know
we covered so much. Every time we talk about this topic, zero trust, there's information we leave not putting on the table because there's just so much information. You could spend, we could easily spend 2 hours having this conversation and getting deeper and digging into, the concepts and the stories and why it's important. I remember when we first covered this a couple of years ago, there was still a lot of controversy around people moving towards zero trust or not doing zero trust, and even thinking it was snake oil in some cases. And now I don't see that as much anymore. That snake oil kind of, I don't really trust it. This isn't really real anymore. I think most people believe this is a solid concept that actually works. And there's proof around why it works. So again, thank you, Rob, for being on the show, for having this conversation. It was a lot of fun. I always enjoy doing this kind of stuff and talking shop, even if sometimes Kevin wants to be me and I don't want to be Kevin. but we know how that goes.
You ruined my thank you, Kevin joke.
So again, we want to thank you for taking the time out to do this.
You're rambling, Kevin. You're rambling, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you again for Threatlocker for
Jason,
sponsoring
quiet.
our show.
That's enough out of you.
I'm sorry.
So, with that, Kevin, you want to say anything before we go?
No, I just, again, thank you, Rob. You're awesome, man. We've had the honor to see you present on this product more than once. Every time I enjoy it, and every time I see it, I take something new away from it. So thank you for doing what you do. Thank you again to Threatlocker for not only helping keep this podcast going, but for building a great product that so many people can count on and solve this zero trust problem. So thanks for that. Thanks for the folks that helped make this happen. David and Ollie, you guys, we appreciate that. And I guess until next time, Rob, how can people find you?
Threatlocker.com, good place to start. We do a bunch of stuff on YouTube's as well. We did a series of webinars there recently, 15 webinars over 100 days. So they're all up on YouTube as well.
Nice.
But basically we're everywhere, all the socials, all the LinkedIn's. You do a hard job not to be able to find us, to be perfectly honest.
There you go.
But website or YouTube would be a good place to start.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, again, thanks for coming on. And until next time, we'll be seeing you guys.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching our latest episode of the Cyber Distortion podcast. We only grow with your support. The best thing you can do to help us grow is to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, follow us on X, and tell just one friend about the show. You can find out more about us on the blog site at www.cyberdistortion.com. Our X handle is @DistortionCyber, and you can also listen to our audio-only versions of the episodes on most major streaming podcast platforms. Just search for Cyber Distortion Podcast. Until next time, take care. Cheers.